Your microphone's on. Can you do roll call? Or who's doing roll call? Oh.
So
Oh, I'm a
I
minute
will
early.
take care of that.
I'm not a minute early now.
Mr. Silva,
Here?
Mr. Guy, absent Ms. Bork,
Here.
Mr. Winterhalter,
Here.
Mr. Weiner,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Mr. Edwards.
Here. Thanks for all coming. We'll start with a moment of silence and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did we, anybody have any comments on the agenda before we start moving on the panel?
Nope.
I'm assuming 4.1 was referencing some minutes, but I don't think we've seen them. We'll move on.
Agenda.
I see 4.1, consider approving.
The agenda.
Agenda.
We have the minute.
Oh, that's under the agenda. Never
Make a
mind.
motion to approve.
Yeah, different point. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes, approve the minutes from January 27th. Anybody have any comments on those?
No, sir. I'll move to approve the minutes from January the 27th, 2022.
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. So we have Stoney Knoll land development plan coming back again. Jim, I guess.
Yes.
And can you start with, we have some new members and it's been a bit.
Sure.
Explain to her where we were with the prior plan and then transition into where we are now.
Sure. Last fall, early summer or late summer, Mr. Nolan, my client, he came in with a 27 lot subdivision off a parcel off of Wayland Avenue and Hunt Valley Lane. After a couple of planning commission meetings and taking into consideration some of the comments from the adjacent neighbors about stormwater management, we got final approval, or we got recommendation for approval preliminary plan from the board, from the planning commission, and then we got final approval from the board in December 13th meeting, I believe. So in the process, as we were going to be developing the final plan, Mr. Nolan took a look at the plan again and decided to maybe kind of cut down on the lots a little bit with consideration for the neighborhood and the neighbors and the type of development that's in that area. So this is what we have now. We're coming in with a 13 lot subdivision, revised plan, as you will. I can kind of point out some of the changes here that we made. If you could put up sheet number 4, fourth one, please. Okay. As you can see from the plan here, we went from 27 lots to 13 lots. We decreased the roadway. There was actually 2 roads on the 27 lots for a total of like 4,000 linear feet of roadway. And we've made it 1 road with 1,780 linear feet. We want to also change the road from a private road to a road dedicated to the township, and we'll make adjustments on right of ways and things like that to make sure that it complies with township regulations. If you can go back 1. Perfect. That gray area is part of the parcel that we had our land development on. As part of this application, we're going to do a lot consolidation. We're going to remove approximately 3.9 acres off of parcel number 002, which is the one on the bottom. And we're going to consolidate it with the adjacent parcel 001. That results in the parcel, the higher parcel, the one at the top going from 44.9 acres to 48.8. And the new one is going to be reduced. I'm sorry, the new one's going to be reduced from 48 acres to 44.9 acres. The top parcel is going to be increased from 46 acres to 50.1 acres. And we also advance to sheet number 8, please. Okay. Okay, during our conversations with the planning commission and the conversations with the neighbors and the review comments, Mr. Porter, we recognized stormwater management was a big deal. And we worked with everyone. I thought we had a pretty good solution to the stormwater management. And what you'll see on the revised plan is really not that much different. We still have 3 basins, which is the 2 on the right and the 1 on the left. We're basically the same basins and locations that we had for the 27 lot subdivision. The other thing we have is down on the borderline, down on the border in between the parcels on Hunt Valley Lane and the bottom of our parcels, we still continue to have a berm there where we will collect water and an inlet and take it away from the properties directly below us and push it more over towards the right-hand side of the property. So the drainage philosophy has pretty much stayed the same. The basins themselves got a little bit smaller, obviously, because we're reducing.
So when you say the push to the right side of the plot, are you saying this side, or are you saying
No.
right's there?
No,
or there?
I'm saying if put your hand in the middle lot on the bottom, all of that area there, which currently flows down through all the houses there, are going to be collected by inlet and pipe over to the right to that inlet right there. Yep, right there. And then that one, right. And this is exactly what we did for the 27 lot. The idea is to reduce the amount of water coming down on the site to the houses on Hunt Valley Lane.
Okay. How's the water get pumped out of the basins?
It gets drained through gravity pipe right down to the existing stream down on the far right side by Echo Valley.
Here.
Yes, that stream that goes right down there. You see that little cross pipe,
Yeah.
the straight pipe with an angle? That drains both basins and discharges it at low velocity to the existing stream.
That was gonna, as I recall, spread it out and then it was gonna push through outlets.
Correct. The idea is a lot of basins just come out with one pipe where the velocity shoots out of one pipe. In this case, we get it into what they call a level spreader, where all the water goes across. I believe that's 150 feet long, and it kind of comes out over the top as opposed to shooting out with a velocity. The idea is you reduce the velocity, you protect the stream, you protect erosion on the stream.
So I'm not an engineer. As the water currently runs off, that water's running off now,
Yes,
as currently situated.
yes.
The site's going to be developed. Space will be consumed. Is this proposed to improve or with the new basins? Or is it going to, how do we kind of have that conversation about how it does or doesn't improve the situation?
All the runoff from the water all the water from the site gets collected into one of those 3 basins, And what that does is that holds the water and reduces the amount of volume of water that currently flows off the site now. In addition, like I said, if you take those bottom 6 lots, all the water comes down there currently off the parcel onto Hunt Valley Lane parcels. That's all going to be split. The water is going to come down, it's going to get split over to either one of those 2 basins on the left or the right, and then discharged that way. So I know there was a lot of concern about runoff coming down off of the parcel onto those lots on Hunt Valley Lane. We've eliminated significant.
And Echo
portion-
Valley.
And Echo Valley, yes.
Yeah. So that water right now runs off as is. Now all that water is going to be controlled and sent to the basins.
Well, yes, and with the two basins on the right go to one pipe that go to the level spreader that discharge next to the stream.
Over, yeah, these two.
Yes,
And discharges where?
right, go a little bit further to your right, that little diagonal, no, up, that diagonal pipe, or that diagonal line is the level spreader.
So these are piping mechanisms here, pumping it into the stream.
Yes, it's not pumping, it's all gravity.
Or
Yes.
gravity.
Yes.
Flows into the stream there.
Yes,
And
And
it's
with,
controlled.
yes,
and with the level spreader, what you're saying is water's coming out through that whole length of that pipe.
yes. The idea being it reduces the velocity of the water coming out, and that's where you get most of your stream erosion is from the velocity.
Spreads.
Yeah, it's gonna be like
Spreads.
a.
Yeah. As
Like a
opposed to
drain
add
tile.
one- Yeah.
What's
I
it
mean, that's
doing-
50
what's it doing
yards.
here? It's running, hitting like a head wall and then dispersing. both.
Actually, it's all underground, and then it'll hit an inlet,
Right.
underground, and then with the inlet, there'll be two pipes out of the side of the inlet.
150 yards,
Yes, 150 feet.
feet.
50
yeah,
yards.
50 feet.
I think it's like 75 on one side, 75 on the other side. And then it fills up a stone trench. And I believe at this point right now, we're gonna construct some kind of like curb, a curb that we know it's level. So the water, as it rises, it goes over at think of it like a little waterfall, like in a reservoir, something like that. Comes out in a big, large, spread out flow as opposed to coming out in one pipe with a high velocity.
And what's the distance from that spreader pipe to the edge of your property? The edge of the property owner's property?
Which property are you?
Which,
referring to?
yeah,
Well, this development goes to that lot line, right? So what we're talking about here is what's the distance from this point here to here?
That varies, but I'd say it's more the location of the stream, and the stream runs right along that property. I would say on the top part, it's probably about 50 feet. On the bottom part, it's probably about 100 feet. And the reason why it's cockeyed a little bit on angles, because that's where the slopes are, and we have to have them in that direction. We can't, it has to match the slope. That's the reason why it's in that direction.
So that will drain into the creek,
existing.
the existing creek from
Yep.
there.
And is the creek running generally horizontal with the property line or perpendicular? I thought it was perpendicular more.
It does, it goes perpendicular with the back property line, and then it kind of
Yeah, it
goes off.
comes down.
Yeah.
You know. Kind of look like the back of these properties is to a degree the streamline.
And then what about across the street? I remember when I went out there. Across the street, there was the creek that's, I assume is that the same creek that are on the cross?
Yes.
And so then it must, somehow make a turn across the road and then go through that property.
I believe that is, I'm not too sure, maybe Dave can help me out on all the creeks in this area, but I believe there's a couple of tributaries that kind of branch off when it goes into the cul-de-sac area of Echo Valley Circle, if you will.
So it's not necessarily immediately flowing into the one that I saw was across the street. It was, it was pretty deep, actually.
You know what, I'm not too sure.
Dave, any comments?
Well, Mr. Silva, I'm not sure where you observed the creek from. If you could give me a little bit more description.
I'm doing my Google Earth. I'll let you know in a second.
I might be able to give you a better idea of where that creek is. I can tell you that if you're on Echo Valley Lane and you're familiar with Echo Valley Lane, there's a little stub, a little spur street that comes off toward the Nolan tract. And it kind of drops off in elevation from Echo Valley Lane and it just stubs off. It just stops. There's no cul-de-sac, there's no turnaround, it just stubs off. There is a paper right-of-way that extends all the way to the track boundary there. And in fact, when we did our public sewer, the authority did the public sewer extension project, we were able to secure an easement through the adjacent property that connected up with that right-of-way where we connected essentially the Newtown Hunt community and the Echo Valley community sewer systems. So if you walk down or drive down that little spur road and stop and walk down into the woods, that creek is running, if you're looking toward the Knoll track, that creek is running from your right to left. And there are some pretty significant banks to get down to that. We did do a stream crossing there for sanitary force main. I think there was already an existing water main that crossed there that previously connected the two developments in the past. So that, from the best of my recollection of being down there, that creek generally meanders and follows the property boundary in that location.
Yep.
And as it works its way, I guess, south, if you will, toward Newtown Hunt, if you're familiar with the Newtown Hunt community, at the very bottom of that community, there's a pond. I believe that the tributary between Echo Valley and this development actually discharges south of that pond to Crum Creek. So it never actually comes into the Newtown Hunt community. The other area where we were previously talking about collecting and then moving the water over and removing it from coming through the backyards of those houses, that actually does collect discharge through the Hunt Valley community. Top of Hunt Valley Circle, it's meanders its way across this Hunt Valley Circle, meanders its way through a couple of residential properties, connects up, and that does feed into the pond in the lower portion of Hunt Valley Circle.
You want to comment? You know, I'm looking at we have your draft review letter. So maybe, do you have the draft as well?
No, I did not. I did not receive that.
No, I apologize. It was fresh off the presses at 5:30 as I was walking out of the office to come here. I did talk with Mr. Gade over the past couple of weeks. He was nice enough to call. We went over the changes to this plan. My letter is essentially taking what the 27 lot subdivision we had original comments and going through those comments to see if there was anything that remained outstanding. Big picture wise for me, and Jim can weigh in on this, and Mr. Sikora is not here to kind of elaborate, but the concern that I had with reducing the number of lots or changing the overall plan from the preliminary to a final application is that once you have a preliminary plan that's approved, even if it has conditions on it, there are certain rights to that approval. Typically, the conditions have to be satisfied in order for that plan to be completely approved and then for it to be recorded. If that were to happen and the plan did get recorded, the applicant could theoretically go out instead of typically when an applicant has a final plan approval, they put up financial security and then they go and get financing and build the project. With a preliminary plan, instead of providing financial security, you can actually go out and just start building some of the public improvements. Start cutting in roads, building storm sewer.
So did they get final though from the supervisors in December?
They got
But with conditions.
They got a preliminary plan approval with conditions that need to be satisfied, correct?
And so are you looking at this is your thought that the right answer for the township is sort of to clear the decks of the old one and say, this is now the direction we're going?
Yeah, in my conversations with Mr. Gade was such that I believe he had spoken with Mr. Sikora about that topic. Mr. Sikora was concerned about the same thing and suggested they amend their application to follow a preliminary / final for the 13 lots, which takes care of this application itself. I don't have an issue with them proceeding with a preliminary / final plan. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially since they've already been to the planning commission. They're essentially scaling back the scope of the project. Stormwater is remaining relatively the same. The sanitary sewer connection is going to be exactly the same. The only thing that I think, as a matter of housekeeping, the applicant may want to formally go on record to withdraw that preliminary plan, or I'm not sure, and that's something that I'd like to talk, and I haven't had an opportunity to talk with Rich Sikora about, but Planning
Well,
commission should be
stop that.
aware.
Does the applicant have a position on that at this point?
When I talked to Mr. Sikora, I posed the same questions that, and he posed them back to me as Dave was just discussing. I don't think we have any problem whatsoever, whether we want to turn this from a preliminary to a final, or whether we just scrap it and go to a preliminary final combination. Doesn't matter to us. There are still things we have to do. We still have to submit for an NPDS permit. We're going to come back here based on the review letters and from both Mr. Porter, the fire marshal, and the arborist. So to us, it doesn't matter. I was going to leave it in the hands of Rich Core, whatever he felt, the most adamant about. So
And timing wise, does it change our window? I know we don't have the Delco letter yet, presumably, that'll be somewhat perfunctory.
Yeah, I think either way you look at it, they've formally submitted a final plan application. So the date from which that was formally accepted at the township would be the date that you start your time clock.
Which is February 24th,
And so then we have how long?
90 days.
February 24th. So we got all of March, all of April, and almost all of May.
Right.
Now, whether that gets amended and becomes a preliminary / final, I'll leave that to Rich to decide.
Yeah, that was kind of what we were
That's the
thinking too.
timeframe.
Let Rich make the decision, and whatever he decides, we can live with that. I don't think it really impacts the clock that much. So,
I just didn't want to get all boxed in,
yep, understood.
not so much, we want to get you through the wicket and do what we got to do. So I'm looking at, I don't know, if you haven't seen the letter. I got 50 items.
Now, a
I
lot
got
of,
one waiver, which is the typical plastic pipe one. What do you think we should,
Actually, there is another waiver that we're going to request.
oh, okay,
There
is another waiver? There's one more waiver, yes.
it's new, I guess.
Yes, it's part of, as part of this, this submission. The maximum cul-de-sac length in Newtown Township ordinance is 700 feet. We are 1,700 feet. I know that sounds like a little bit difference, but most of the length of a cul-de-sac is usually based on the density, the number of houses on the cul-de-sac, and whether or not, if they're like a tree falls down, all of a sudden you're going to have 100 homes trapped behind one cul-de-sac. The other point to the Newtown ordinance is that they have a maximum of 24, I believe, maximum is 24 residential lots on a cul-de-sac. And we only have 13. So, and it's a very low density site. It's basically 0.35 units per acre, which is pretty low density. So we would like to request that waiver. We don't think it's that much of a stretch. Also considering there's a couple other cul-de-sacs in Newtown that are longer than 700.
Newer ones?
What's that?
Newer ones?
There's one on White Horse. There's one on Camelot, which I think is newer. And then there's some older ones, Dunmannings, stuff like that.
Back up and you made reference to why the ordinance is kind of that way. And that was referencing more units,
Correct.
right? What's the rationale behind that 700 unit amount? Yes, you're way down on the units. That's a good thing. I personally appreciate that, but what's the rationale behind the 700 feet and the density?
Well, the idea is, let's say if you're in like an R2, R1 or R2, a more dense residential area, you could put a cul-de-sac that's 700 feet and you could fit probably 50 houses on it, depending on the minimum size of the lots. So that's why they say, okay, it's not only 700, but no more than 24, because the idea, it's, maybe Dave has a better opinion on this, but I was always told that it's a safety issue, that if the road gets blocked, you're not going to trap a huge community from getting off the road.
Mhm.
That's what I understand the reason for that is. And that's the reason why, in addition to 700 feet, they say, okay, no more than 24 units.
Mhm. And you're at 13.
How wide is the roadway out to the cul-de-sac? 35 feet?
24 feet. The width of the roadway. That's
Yes.
24 feet. That's township standard.
Has Carl Keene commented yet?
Yeah, he had a couple of comments about placing fire hydrants in different locations. He also wanted us to run a different truck template for the fire truck that we showed in there, because it says it's a 2-axle truck as opposed to what we had as a 1-axle truck. I read his review letter. There's nothing in there that's we can't handle, we can revise.
And what are your thoughts on it?
Well, Mr. Gade is certainly correct that there are other cul-de-sacs in the township that exceed that maximum requirement. Namely, the one on Camelot Lane, which is certainly higher density. I mean, and we also have already has a pump station at the very end of that cul-de-sac. So it were to be blocked, it would be an issue to get to, but you know, I mean, I'm thinking this day and age with the responsiveness to those types of things. I don't want to speak for the emergency management coordinators or the fire marshal in that regard. I mean, their response times are certainly beyond what I could weigh in on. Something were to happen and to block the road for them to get in and out of there. I wouldn't want to see one person or killed as a result of that. You have to kind of, I guess, weigh your pros and cons. This particular layout, I think meets all other requirements of the code other than the length. Actually, I think there was one horizontal radius that was a little bit short, Jim. When I looked at it, I think the minimum is 250 feet. I think you had about 200 feet coming into the cul-de-sac bulb, which is not that big of a deal.
Jim, can you point out how many lots in would be about 700 feet? I want to just as I count.
I would say cut it in half, cut the road in
Okay.
half, roughly. A little bit less, actually.
Yeah,
Maybe 6 of the 13 houses would fit on there.
if I go in 3 houses plus or minus.
The other thing to consider is we did recently adopt the International Fire Code in its entirety. And I believe under Appendix D, that has a limitation of 35 units before a second means of ingress and egress is required to the property. So I know that's outside the scope of our land development ordinance, but it is a newly adopted ordinance in the township.
I'm glad you brought that up, Andy, because to the best of my recollection, there is going to be sprinkler systems in
Right.
each house, right? There's going to be
Yes.
That was part of it.
potable and fire service to
Right.
each house.
That's another safety factor.
So that's a waiver that I would like to, you guys, the board or the planning commission to consider tonight. But there's another change that I just want to point out here. The basin that is at the intersection of Wayland and Hunt Valley Lane. We updated the infiltration testing for all these basins, and that one was not as good as we wanted it to. So whenever we resubmit plans, we're going to move that that basin up closer to what would be considered lot 12 and 13 in that area. So if the next time we come in, you see that the basin's changed, that's the reason.
Yeah, I think on the length of the road, feel like I'm in a better position to think about it once the county's commented on it and kind of get a little bit more kind of percolating about that. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. Other people can have a different opinion. We're more than double. There's not a lot of density. As you said, you're putting in sprinklers. City water pressure will be enough for all that. But even if you lost power, your sprinklers are going to work. That's my personal opinion on the road. Again, we have some time to get this through. Open to other people's thoughts.
How many did you say, how many units typically on a 700-foot long cul-de-sac in a less fenced
or a
It-
more dense zoning district.
It really matters on the zoning district. There's no restriction of putting a cul-de-sac on a more dense residential subdivision.
Right,
It's a matter of saying, okay, in Newtown Township, the density max is 24, fire code being 34, 35. So I mean, I can't tell you, I do know that if that was the 27 lot, if we had the density of the 27 lot, based on ours, you would probably be able to fit close to 20 on that cul-de-sac right there.
I think the other way you can ask the question is the frontage requirement is 80 feet in an R3 district. So 80 feet along 700 feet on both sides, you
Right.
get quite a number of,
that's going to give you more than 13.
absolutely.
Okay.
And just a general question, I'm looking, do you have on-lot infiltrate? It looks like you only have on-lot filtration on the north side.
Yes.
Is that just because of the way that the grade works and you feel like you need to hold some water for a while?
Well, yeah, well, we always like to try to get, to help out. In other words, instead of having bigger basins, you kind of put the individual lots on there. And the reduction of the impervious, switching from the 2 roads to the 1 and the 27, is we don't really need each lot to have infiltration.
Any public comment? Do we have a microphone up at the? Please, name and address when you get there, please.
Sure. I'm Steve Rhoads. We're 359 Echo Valley. We represent the 3 houses that are right on that strip. The water comes up. This, you guys all hear me just fine.
We can hear you.
Yeah, but for the report,
Oh, okay.
for the online.
So you mentioned it just now, the reduction in impervious. So as I'm hearing the discussion on the roadway and blockage, how long is a fire hose from the truck? Right, and so potentially, if the truck can't go any further forward, then how far can they get with the hoses at the blockage, right? So if the road's really long, then they can't get close unless they can move the blockage. But I was worried about the impervious and how much the water flows into our creek. I know you mentioned that we have the 150 feet of spreader that's going to spread it out for the creek. So that's great. But you also mentioned that the retention ponds are smaller. And so I know that right now, no, not much water flows into the creek. So that's an admission, but we also have open fields that absorb the water. And if we put houses in there and lawns and sprinkler systems, even if you have pervious landscape, it's not going to absorb as well as open fields and trees. And so I just wondered about the reduction in size of the retention ponds.
Okay, well, the reduction in size in the retention basins, first of all, it's not a significant amount, because we do have other factors to consider on the. But to kind of maybe allay some of your concerns, more water runs off of a cornfield than it does on grass. So in reality, by changing this from a cornfield to residential, you'll actually get more infiltration through the grass. Will be less runoff coming off.
But it's not a cornfield right now, right? It's,
Yes.
oh, it is, okay. I only asked, and I brought this up last time too, because we put in geothermal in our house. And when we did, they covered it back up with soil. And then the runoff, we had the big rain, and it ran all into our basement.
Right.
But it never happened in 20 years. But it was because our grass was gone.
Right.
And
And in a cornfield, there's a lot of rows of exposed dirt. So as the road comes down more, when we do stormwater calculations, we actually have to assume a higher runoff from a cornfield than we would from a grass area.
okay. Just thought I'd ask.
Thank you. Anybody else? Name and address, please.
Brad Rich, 357 Echo Valley, at the bottom of the drain pipe. Just a quick question. The And the plan looks much improved. Well, actually, a couple of questions. Previous plan, there were no sidewalks? Is that still?
No, we added a sidewalk as per the board of supervisors, and there is a sidewalk along the bottom strip of the road.
So, just on the one side, yeah. So the catch drainage that's along the street would be on the other side of the street, or?
We have inlets, we have a swale situation on both sides of the road. It goes into the swale, we have inlets in the swales, and the sidewalk is on the other side of that swale.
Oh, wow. 150 feet spread at the bottom of the, along the stream.
Yes.
Approximately, do you have any idea how far away from the stream that is?
That is an equal distance to the stream, because you want to have it the same distance. Like I said, I haven't put a scale to this, but I believe it's no more than 75 feet, 50 feet. And I do know that we have to apply for what they call an MPDS permit, and they're going to regulate the size, the location of that pipe next to the creek.
So it's not going to be right up against the edge of the creek.
Oh, no,
It'll
no, no.
be back.
It'll be back.
With some opportunity for it to
For
spread. before it
the,
gets to the-
yes, it'll spread and hopefully maybe even go into the soil. We're not, the bad part of this is we're not allowed really to touch that because that's a forested area. So DEP only wants us to come in, cut the pipe, and that's it. They don't want us to mess with the forest. So we couldn't try to put like grass or something a little bit better in there.
Is there a calculation of the difference of runoff from the old plan to what this plan is?
Yes, there is. Since the point of discharge, which is where all the basins are going, are relatively in the same spot. Yes, there is a difference. They asked me for that, and I'm sorry, I don't have the number on the top of my head.
But even just a rough, a third or a tenth, or,
You know what? I don't even want to venture. I don't want to venture. I can certainly say, next time we're at the planning commission, I can certainly report.
I mean, you do have less impervious, so.
Yeah, as a point of
So-
speculation,
Less roof, less driveway, less road,
Lot less road.
yeah.
so, it's.
Sounds good. Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
So Jim Martin, 2407 Wayland, so across the street from kind of the northern boundary of the parcel. And I don't know if this is for all questions or if we're specifically limiting it to runoff here, but I had a question with respect to if there's any plans for landscaping or berm along Wayland Road on the, I guess that would be the north or northeastern edge of the project.
Yeah, we had a conversation with the arborist. He looked at the trees along Wayland Road and indicated that a lot of them are really old. So his first response was, let's protect them. And then he took a closer look at them and said, these are really old. If you try to protect them, they're just going to go down in 10 years. So he doesn't have any problems with us. So what one of our plans is there's a lot of dirt coming out to construct those basins. We're going to put like a landscape berm along Wayland Avenue in between.
Great, thank you. And with respect to, and maybe this is beyond the scope of the planning commission's responsibility, so please tell me if so, but do you have from a project plan perspective, how you expect this to unfold from a construction point of view? Or like, is it going to be one at a time as the parcels sell, or is it going to be built as an entire project?
My guess is you'll build the infrastructure first. As the sales, as the lots get sold, you'll put more. There may be a couple of model homes or something like that, but I doubt it with this type of buyer.
Okay,
Buy
thank
the
you.
lot, then construct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Koenig, 195 Hunt Valley Circle. Can't speak for everybody on the circle, but I'm thankful for Mr. Nolan's consideration for his neighbors. I've said this before, if someone has to develop the property, I'd prefer that it be him because he does good work. I do have some questions. I can reach it. This part right here, the drainage channel, has this been extended in this direction? It appears to have.
Yes, we're trying to keep us, we're trying to reduce the water flowing through.
Yeah.
And there's a thing on stormwater management that's called uncontrolled, where you can improve something and you let some water go and it's uncontrolled, but but you're just gonna have to double up by design to kind of compensate for that.
Yeah.
We try to eliminate as much uncontrolled as possible.
I mean, it seems all for the better. And then you've settled this, but I want to make sure I understand. This is all underground and it's all gravity flow.
Yes.
And what's the pipe constructed of?
The what?
The pipe is carrying the water underground.
To be honest with you, I don't know. It's probably most likely an 18 or 20 inch.
In
24
any
inch.
case, it's not porous.
No. It's a solid pipe because the idea is that we have to get it to that basin. We have to collect it all and get it to that basin.
Right.
So it's not porous.
And then one question here. On this lot, if I've correctly identified it, there already is a pipe built to catch stormwater. Of course, I'm interested in that because it goes directly to into the waterway that's eroding by my house on the other side of the street. He knows my neighborhood far better than I do at this point, but it runs approximately here, some of it comes around, some above. So can you address whether this is going to be sufficient to prevent further flow into that drainage system? Because as I said, I think some of it's underwater, some underground, some above. This becomes a wetland because it's so wet. I mean, our neighbor there's planted like marsh grasses, and then into the waterway draining to this pond, which Mr. Porter referred to. So, is the idea to catch the water here and not let any water get into that drainage system?
Short answer is yes. I think. Bearings over Valley Circle runs here.
Yeah.
The bottom of Hunt Valley Circle where I referred to the pond is down. I believe this is the location of where approximately where that. Yes. This property is a couple that just
Exactly.
so yes. Drainage that's coming down to this area from this point over to this point will all be collected and taken over. You think that was coming down to this point and was getting to that pipe, now going here.
Yes.
It's not going to come down.
So you could make the argument that the water flowing into that section will be less than it currently is.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. And for that, thank you very much.
Leading me to the basin issue and its ability to function properly for the adjacent Echo Valley properties. How's it maintained? I don't know who that question's for, the township or for.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Porter can tell you that when there is a stormwater management basin, the developer has to sign an operation and maintenance agreement. It gets inspected every year, cleaned, to
Yeah,
make sure
okay.
pipes aren't clogged, stuff like that.
Yep.
Well, that raises the issue of actually who is going to maintain long-term. You have references to a homeowners association. I'm assuming this is not a planned residential development, so that's going to have to be done by some sort of declaration that would enable the association to assess the homeowners for the cost of the maintenance.
Yes, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not that familiar with how that works. But the stormwater basins will be, maintenance of them will be underneath the homeowners association. The road will now be dedicated to the township, but the
Okay.
stormwater management
I
facilities.
would suggest that we would want a little bit more detail about the operation and then financing of the homeowners association, just to be sure that there are mechanisms in place to provide adequate funding.
It's my understanding that Mr. Sikora will take care of all that
Yeah.
as we
Yeah,
come to
Rich
terms
will.
on this.
He'll typically review all
Yeah.
that.
But good point.
Yeah, I'm Joanne Stevens and I'm 355 Echo Valley Lane. My backyard backs up to the highest and the steepest part of the hill that goes up to Nolan's. And I assume that upper basin is visible to my backyard. And I'm wondering, how do you put a basin in a really sloped area like that?
With engineering fill. And it's done right. I mean, it's not like we're just going to haphazardly put it on there, but
Are you cutting trees out to do this?
yes, you will cut
basin?
the trees out. And the remainder, I'm not gonna say you're not gonna see that, but as I mentioned before, DEP will not allow us, and I don't even think the township would really want us to do any more taking out of trees other than for the basin and for the pipe coming down. So most of that forested area is going to remain. DEP under the MPDS has also told us that they don't want us to cut down any tree that is not necessary for either the basin or the pipe.
Okay, so it is feasible to make a basin on a sloped area? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Any more comments? So process wise, so you've been in dialogue, but haven't had a lot, you haven't seen this letter. I got 50 items and, I'm assuming you'll work it. In a month, we'll come back and there'll be 20 of them and there'll be the 2 waivers and we'll have.
Honestly, it probably would be likely to be more than like 10 than 20. Just for the simple fact that we've been through the plan already. A lot of the comments that are in there are kind of just placeholders. So they're simple, pick up the phone, talk to Jim, we'll get them squared away type things. The bigger picture items I've already shared with the planning commission are more procedural, preliminary, and final plan application processing. Aside from that, I don't see any real engineering show-stopping items that are going to be difficult to overcome. I think some of the logistical street layout and construction probably going to be most of the conversation, because as Mr. Gade mentioned, that they're going to be looking to dedicate the road to the township. As you recall, the street construction standards are certain width for private roads versus public roads. I think that's something that'll have to be addressed. They are proposing slightly more than required minimum right-of-way width for this road, now that they've added the sidewalk in, which is one of the advisors. Aside from that, again, I think they've maintained the same outlook and approach to stormwater management, which I think is an approach. Basin 2 is still something that I kind of hang up on, but I think we're getting pretty close to having an agreement on that one. Aside from that, I think the stormwater approach is.
And I think I'm inclined to see if we can get Carl Keene or a representative here, just to discuss the length of the road and, so we have the resources to get our questions answered.
I did notice in Mr. Keene's, I didn't have his letter before tonight's meeting, but I did read it before the meeting began. I believe he commented in his letter that the road length was only about 1,100 feet. So I don't know if he mistyped or misread the plan. So I want to make sure that he's aware that it's the 1,700, not 1,100. That's a big difference in requirement.
And to go a little bit one step further on that, that is the purpose of our adopting the fire code. So if Carl can't make it, I can provide you the actual code section that determines what the length of the the fire code would reference it as a fire apparatus access road. And it's going to give very specific requirements on its length. And I can include the document regarding the number of units on a single access point.
Yeah, because I guess I'm the longest one here. I don't recall we've ever discussed that. Camelot was done before I was on. So it's not been common. I just want to, if we're going to make a decision and make a rule, I just want to make sure we've got everything we need.
The best of my recollection, just for the plan commission's benefit, I believe there's 27 units on Camelot Lane. And as the sanitary sewer pump station all the way at the end of the cul-de-sac. And I think that cul-de-sac is about 11 or 12.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture which one that is. You know, they all have those names like that.
What, Camelot?
Yeah.
You go up 252, past Tech on your left, 252.
No, I know the
Oh,
development. Yeah, I'm just trying to, I can see through the woods. I can see the
Oh, yeah,
townhouse,
yeah.
but I just trying to picture which road it is. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments?
You know, big picture, I think this project has been here for a while over the years, slowed down, picked up at different times. The unit evolution and the scale of the project, the focus on the major issue of the water, you've clearly done that. Maybe we're not totally there yet, but we'll get there. You know, it's a good development, and I know we're putting you through the ringer, but, you know, we appreciate how you've evolved the project.
Have any final thoughts, comments?
No, I just wanted to make sure you're aware that, you know, the basin location is going to change and the waiver, that's really the biggest things I wanted to talk about tonight.
Okay. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
We have code enforcement.
I
Future
just wanted to
project.
give you an update on what's kind of coming in that you can expect probably on next month's agenda besides this. And that would be, the township been waiting on Aronimink to file, Aronimink Golf Course to file a land development plan for a number of different projects. They've been in-house since last October. The board's given them some waivers or some time extensions in which to file. They started one project prior to getting such approvals. So that was the reason why they had to approach the board. So we do expect that application to be submitted sometime within the next few weeks to allow it to be on your next month's agenda. And then just one other topic, we had a brief meeting with Mr. DePaton, who has the property down near Alice Grim Boulevard and Westchester Pike. And he met with township staff and the township manager. They're looking to, of course, expedite, but we've yet to receive an application. But they want to build a memorial hall for the Veterans Memorial Hall. So in part of our meeting conversations, it was get the application in, we'll get it on your agenda. We'll make sure that you have all the adequate plans that you need to do a fair review.
Adjacent to the,
It's just a heads up on what may be coming in front of you.
oh, good, I appreciate that. Any more? Mr. Smith, any, that was, I guess, items for the next agenda. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thanks for coming.
Oh, okay.